Hi, I'm Sam Clift. Welcome to my channel. I'm an artist and I put out art tip videos, tutorials, and also creative mindset magic videos. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I drew this lovely rhino in coloured pencils. A very, very different texture to the normal fur and lots of warm and cool tones in it. I found it really a massive learning curve for me to do this different texture, lots of different textures involved. If you would like to see the full tutorial on this rhino, it is available on my Patreon page and I will put that link in the description below, but I really hope you enjoy the video. I start off as always by outlining the eye. I use the dark sepia so it's easier to lift up, going around the top as well, and then just darkening any lines, adding any shapes that need to, and going into the bottom section of the eye, really tiny eye on the rhino. I'm blending with a cold grey 3 just on the lower eyelid, and then just adding the lines. At the moment I'm just mapping everything in, trying to work out where everything goes, and using warm greys and cool greys. This is a cold grey 5 just to map in the eye. Going in with the black underneath, it's the only way to darken up as much as you need to in the eye to make it look really glassy, even though it's absolutely tiny, this eye. And then I'm using the white luminance pencil just to lay down a base layer so that I know that I've got the option to scrape back. Going over the top with the cold greys, so I'm adding a layer, working up through the colours, and I'm just using either a back and forth motion or a big circle motion to just build up the layers. You can see the graininess of the paper here, adding a little bit of the blue ultramarine there. The graininess of the paper is going to show until you've got enough layers down that it's not going to show. The skin is textured, which is really great. We want some texture, but we want it where we want it. I'm starting to map in the lines under the eye and around the top of the eye. Very, very light hand. I'm not pushing very hard at all. And then just making sure that with every wrinkle, I'm not just adding a line, I'm going in and adding shading next to it so it looks more like a curve than it does just a straight line. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with wrinkles. They just put the line in, they don't put any shading next to it, and it just looks like you've scribbled lines on it, and it can look really quite flat. So just adding the lines, so going in with the time lapse now, because I'm doing exactly the same thing. And I'm adding layers now, going in over the top of the white, going in slightly darker, building them up. So I'm not going in with a really dark colour to begin with. I'm slowly building up through the colours using a combination of the colds and the warm greys to really start building the tones. The skin changes all over. There's darkness around the edge, there's darkness towards the wrinkles, and I'm just building it up slowly using small circles, and then going on to the next section and doing exactly the same thing again. So you can see I'm starting to get rid of the graininess slightly, but it is taking layer after layer. Going in and just darkening up the wrinkles now. I'm using a combination of the dark sepia and maybe, if I need to go really dark, the black or the Payne's grey. And I'm just going to add some little lines all over. Here on the face you can see I'm just building them up, and now going in with the slice tool. Now, because we added that layer of luminance, it means that I can actually slice back to the paper and show up these lovely little highlight wrinkles next to the darker wrinkles. Doing exactly the same, going in and building up from light to dark, and then mapping in where the wrinkles are going to be, starting off with quite a dark line so that I can see it, and then I'm going in and just building around it, building through the wrinkles, making sure it's not just a line. There's the nose there, building up, you can see from light to dark, adding the wrinkles, adding the gradient of shadow next to the wrinkle, and then going in at the very last and really darkening where the darkest parts are. Around the bottom of the nose was really dark. There were some really deep wrinkles within the nose. You can see I've gone in dark along the line and then adding the shadow with the warm grey 6 is amazing. Added a touch of blue as well to really bring out the shine in some of the highlighted areas, using the slice tool next to the wrinkles to make sure if there's any light catching on them, then that's highlighted too. And then I'm darkening up the deepest wrinkles and then blending with lighter colours, going from light to dark to make it look like they're folds instead of just lines. It's really important that you do this. If you've got a highlight next to it, then you've got a shadow, like a gradient shadow, and then you've got the darkest lines. It looks like a fold in the skin. as opposed to a cut in the skin. Really darkening up the bottom. The values are so important, more important than getting the colours absolutely right. You need to make sure that your darks are dark enough and your highlights are light enough, so you can use your Tombow Mono to lift back up, you can use your kneadable eraser, and you can use the slice tool, which is amazing too. But you need to get the values in to make sure that it's looking like it's got the right contrast. It could be a bright pink Rhino and it would still look realistic if the values were correct. Just looking at it from a distance, I tend to zoom out every now and again just to make sure that it's looking okay. I think that's a really good thing to do, and also take a photo with your phone. It really shows some of the imbalances, if there is any. I'm doing exactly the same technique with the horn, going with the lighter colours, a base of the luminance white, and then building up slowly through the light, to the darks, the cools and the warms together, and just making sure that any highlights are there, the darkest parts are as dark as they need to be, and then really going in and adding the blue as a highlight. The warm greys and the cool greys work brilliantly together, and then darkening up through the blacks as well. I'm doing this whole section in time lapse because it's exactly the same technique that I've used for the rest of it. So I'm going in with a base layer of the white luminance and then building up through the cools and the warms of the greys. I'm mapping in where the darker tones are, so I'm not pressing any harder, I'm just going over the same area quite a few times with the different colours just to build them up. And then I can gradually start to work up to the wrinkles, adding a dark line in so I can make sure that it stands out. I know where it is, and then I can add the mid-tones around it, darkening up the wrinkles as I need to, and then balancing everything out at the end. Again, making sure that we go in and add the gradient next to the wrinkles so it's not just a line, and then I can go back in and balance everything out. Like with most drawings, it's really difficult to see how dark to go until you've got other sections in. So sometimes we need to go for the darkest part and that we can see, we go to a certain level, and then we go into the next section and we look back and we see that it really needs darkening even more. There are some places like the ear and the nostrils and the eye usually that you can tell that you need to use your black, but I found, especially with smooth paper and especially with kind of softer smooth papers like this Fabriano Artistico, the pencil soaks in a little bit, so it might be that it fades, or it might be that you're possibly smudging it. Even if you use a little bit of paper over your drawing, you might smudge a little bit off, so you will need to go back in and balance it all out again by adding some more darkness. Going into the body and doing exactly the same method. Now I am quite far into the drawing. I know exactly what colours to use because I've got them laid out next to me on the table. I've used all of the greys here, from the warm 1 to 6, the cold 1 to 6, the Payne's grey, the dark sepia, which I know is more of a brown colour, and the black as well. This skin was really interesting because there was lots of little kind of holes in it. I used a few different techniques, but the main thing I would say is that map them in and then blend them with a lighter pencil so that they don't look so obvious. You soften the pencil strokes and it looks a little bit more blurred. Think about where you want your focus to be. Do you want the focus to be around the eye area, around the centre of the face, like maybe the nose? And then other areas maybe need to be a little bit more blurred. I tend to find that if you add the same amount of detail and the same amount of focus to the whole of the drawing, it can look a little bit busy. Sometimes it can look a little bit over too much for the eye. The brain tends to fill in the gaps, so sometimes less is more. You don't need to go in with as much detail as you think you do, but I like to have a little bit of a focus. So for me, it was like the front of the lip, because Rhino's eyes are so small, the front of the lip was the most detailed because that was the thing that was closest to the camera. Same with the horn. And then the body, going in exactly the same technique, I left it a little bit blurry. So I colour blocked, and then right at the very end, I added some details in, some lines in the skin. And then at the very end of the drawing, which is what I always do for the last hour, maybe 2, is go back in and balance all of the values. So going and darkening everything up, if anything's smudged, if anything's worn into the paper, using the slice tool to pull up some highlights as I'm doing here. And then I decided to put the bit of the body in, the last part, very, very blurred, not much detail at all, but I don't know why I left it out. I think sometimes you just have to see how the composition's looking. Do you need to add a little bit more? Do you decide to leave things out? I think it really did add to it, and I just went in and made sure that I just put a little bit of the warm greys around, and then I can balance everything back out, spending the final moments just going back into everything, darkening everything up. As I said before, I went and actually lengthened the legs because they looked a little bit too short, so I used exactly the same method. So it's just balancing the composition and just seeing how it looks in the final once over. And there's the finished Rhino, all done. Hi, I really hope this was helpful and you found some tips on how to create that textured skin look of the Rhino. If you would like to see the full tutorial in real time, I tell you which pencils I choose, exactly what I'm doing as I'm doing it. It is available on my Patreon page. I will put the link in the description box. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and click on that bell notification so that you're notified of future videos just like this one. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Bye for now.